Hey guys, welcome back to AMC. We have a special treat actually. So Lauren and Caesar went to the Florida Regional, which was obviously down in Florida. They recorded some matches, and because I had a bunch of matches in the can from Dance with Dragons and they had a bunch of matches in the can from their Florida Regional, in case you haven't noticed, what we decided to do was swap. So AMC South is doing the voiceovers and the commentary on the Dance with Dragons series. And I think that's more interesting. I'll be doing the commentary for the AMC South recorded videos from the Florida Regional. And I think this is a really fun idea because all of my previous commentaries, I already knew the outcome of the matches. And whether I tried to or not, chances are I was going to accidentally spoil who won or give some sort of commentary indicating who won just subconsciously. And probably they would too if they did the voiceover on these Florida matches. So we had the idea to, I'll record their matches and they'll record mine, and that way you actually get a fresh, legitimate perspective on what you think is happening in the game, because literally we don't know the outcome as we're watching. So here we've got Martell Rose on the right and Targ Xing on the left. Right off the bat, my gut is telling me that the Targ Xing is going to be too much for the Martell Rose. I know Martell Rose has very good icon control, but I think the speed and the pressure that Targ Xing can put on people is just going to be too much for the Martell. And again, I have no idea what's happening in this game. We're just going to watch and find out together. So you can see right there on the right, the way that player, the Martell player, laid down his cards. I think he made a mistake right off the bat, because he's indicating he put him in a pile of 3 and a pile of 4. So his opponent can assume that he either has a 3-card setup or a 4-card setup, and we can argue all day whether or not that's useful information or if he's bluffing, but he's giving him information. So it looks like Knight of Flowers and the Scavenger, a couple of dragons, and duped Vis. Or are those the reducers? It's hard to tell. But yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people do it, but I wouldn't put my cards down before setup if I didn't have to. Just hold them in your hand, tell them you're ready, you're not mulliganing, don't give them any information. I mean, believe it or not, I know that there's people that will put down their setup hand in the same configuration like they would as if they're face up. So you're giving your opponent how many characters and how many locations you're playing before they even choose to keep their mulligan or not. That's weird to me. Granted, there's some opportunity for some bluffing there if you goof around with the configuration, but chances are your opponent's really not going to care. So it looks like a noble and maybe a trading. I think the Targ Xing players really got to be super aggressive. That's the way the deck plays, in my opinion. You really got to punch somebody in the face if you let the Martell challenge control, icon control slowly turn the corner. It's tough to catch up to. So I think the Targ Xing player is going to really have to smash this dude in the face as soon as possible, take full control of the board and not look back. If he hesitates at all and gives the Martell player a foothold, that's going to be tough to come back from. Can't tell for sure, but it looks like I see Crown of Gold in his hand. See if he saves that for maybe a nice high value target. For some reason, it irritates me when people count their gold with dice. I'm not sure why. It's just makes it tougher to follow for me. But Danny hits the board with 2 dragons and money left over. That is exactly what I want to see out of a Targ Xing. He may not be able to get full utilization out of the agenda right now, but as the game progresses, especially with Illyrio out as well, this is an excellent, oh my goodness, and a duped Illyrio. Horrible, horrible, horrible to see for the Martell player. We gotta hope he has some tricks. 2 gold left, according to his dice. Again, I don't know why it irritates me. Maybe because it's harder to see when you're glancing at the board state. You can't really tell exactly how much gold he has left for a put or a Dracarys. Martell Rose graciously counting out his money with actual money. Imagine that. Something I like to do when I'm playing Noble Cause is I put the 2 gold on the plot. So, because, you know, everybody makes mistakes. I often forget the 2 gold unless I'm really, really focused. You never want to let something like that slip. So right now we see he's playing the long game, opting to play the Rose Road. I know it's hard to do when you have a King's Road in your hand, and I don't know that he does. Looks like he's removing an icon there. But if you have a King's Road and a Rose Road in your hand, it's really hard to not play that King's Road early. But I personally, because I identify as a control player, I like to play the long game. But even still, I have to force myself to play the gold rather than the King's Road. A lot of icon control coming out of Martell. We're not surprised to see this at all. He's going to try to slowly grind him down. I imagine we'll see some Vengeance for Elias, some Tainted, some Nymeria. Not exactly sure what the Terrell banner adds here, except maybe some ability to rush to close with the Knight of Flowers there. I don't really recall off the top of my head if Mare and Heat is loyal or not, but if not, I imagine we'll see that. Alright, so, oh, I thought he was going to save the 2, and he is going to save the 2. Good. It looks like we do see a put to the sword in his hand, but as we always say, even if you don't have it, if you can save the 2 gold, save it. It's always good to bluff. I know I repeat myself a lot on these commentaries, but you know, I can't assume everybody's listening to everything, and on the off chance this is a brand new player listening to this commentary for the first time, I want to hit as many of the points as I can for you. So I apologize for the repetition, but I think it's necessary in these commentaries. Now I want to see this Targaryen player be as aggressive as he can and play hard.
The one who was immune to all events and stuff like that.
So looks like he's getting the military challenge out of the way. You don't have to make all 3 challenges with a crossing deck early, but you really got to set yourself up to do so mid-game to late game. But you want to get them out as soon. If you can't get all 3 challenges, oftentimes the best strategy with crossing is to just kneel yourself out just to get that power and say, I think I can get to 15 before you can stop me, even if I'm eating 3 of your unopposed challenges every round. And sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, but that's the dice that you roll when you play crossing. And there you go. That's what he was saving his money for. That is a very irritating card. Clearly, if you're unfamiliar, it's called Vengeance for Elia. It is a reprint of a first edition card called Red Vengeance, where you had to kneel 2 influence, which was a type of currency in first edition. I would have preferred to see him save that card for a 2-claim plot, but if he's trying to slow down the Targ rush, there's really not much to be worried for there. He's just trying to do everything that he can to stem the bleeding, I suppose, but it's a little early for a card like that. I'm also quite surprised he opted to use the dupe of Illyria when he had 2 Chud sitting in the back row, and plenty of economy with his locations. I would have liked to see him save that dupe. You know, the dupe is better for things like Wildfire. He's going to have to get rid of those 2 Chuds for a Wildfire anyways, and it's better to keep characters with dupes rather than economy that you don't need. So he swings for a power challenge. I'm not sure that I really like this move. I'd rather have him leave Danny standing for now, keeping that -1 in effect. I don't know. Maybe he just really wants a card with the insight. He still does have 2 gold left, so we don't know what kind of tricks he's going for. I'm not sure why Martell cares to defend this. He looks like he's considering defending to win, but he doesn't have any power to steal. Maybe this is a new player. So if he's going to defend, that's the right move. Just defend enough to prevent the unopposed. So let's see if he's saving any tricks here for challenge 3. Ah, okay. That's why he's attacking with Danny. It's hard to see with the glare and the resolution, but he has the dragon out that would stand Danny, so there's no reason not to attack with her. And here comes the intrigue. Let's see if he saved the Tears of Lys in his hand or something. It would be nice for him to get that off on the... If he can get a Tears of Lys on the Knight of Flowers, I'd say this game is already over. As it is, I think the crossing is in very good position. So, oftentimes with crossing, players are going to forget about the +2, let alone the -1 with Danny. So if he's got the tears, I can't see if he does. It looks like maybe he had Crown of Gold and a put to the sword in his hand when he was flipping through them. But he does have a lot of cards. I'll request again, anybody playing on camera, please, if you can and you don't mind, flash your cards in your hand to the camera every now and then. The listening audience will love you for it. Players being very deliberate here, whether that's a tough decision or inexperience, I am not sure. But he doesn't have that many cards in his hand, so he can't have that many potential decisions. And look how fast that power rush has already started. Again, I can't really see because he's counting his power with dice, and the resolution is such I can't tell how many power he has. Looks like maybe 3 + 1 on Danny. Yeah, again, this is a very strong start for the Targ player. Normally, to get all 3 of your challenges, you have to kneel out your whole board this early. But player on turn 1 managed to have pretty much all the key players that you want to see in a Targ deck, other than maybe Khal Drogo, which if he's running Danny and the Dragons, he may not even have Khal Drogo in the deck. I know the Targ crossing generally tends to stay cheaper, but I imagine he's got at least 1 copy in there. So, if it's not already in his hand, I would expect to see him drop a summons next turn to go dig for it, to really put the pressure on. And we know with Martell player having no gold left, he doesn't have to worry about protecting his Danny or anything like that. So I find it hard to believe, with only 2 cards in hand and a limited board, clearly behind in board state, the Martell player, is how he can come back and win this. I think a miracle would have to happen. I mean, Martell's best bet is to top deck a Nymeria and Tyene and somehow play them both and start chipping away. But you got to win challenges to be able to do that. And I'm not sure Targ is going to let you do that. Now, with the Crown of Gold that I believe I can see in the Targ player's hand, I would like to see him go second next turn, just to see what other potential high-value targets the Martell player puts down. He's got plenty of stuff on the board to choose from already, but you never know when that perfect target is going to come out, like a Nymeria. If he can poach a Nymeria with his Crown of Gold, that will be pretty much the nail in the coffin. Okay, so I want to see the Targ player drop a summons if he has it, or some sort of utility plot to further his board position and or defend from the icon manipulation. If he's got a confiscation and can take off one of those negative attachments, that would be good also. As far as the Martell player, I mean, unless he's got fortified position or a first snow. Okay, we've got Calm versus Winds of Winter. I'm not sure why you drop Winds of Winter there. 2 claim doesn't really help if you're not positive that you can push challenges through. Yes, it's scary to sit across the table from, but if you have dominating board position, I don't know why you care anyways. Looks like Targ player's sitting at 6 power already. Should be a quick game. Just from the way the Targ player is handling his board, I'm going to say that he is either a current or former Magic player. The tight twitchy motions are very familiar for me. Not that I never played Magic competitively, but I watch it for fun occasionally online, and that seems to be a habit of Magic players. It's weird how, even though I played Magic for maybe 6 months to a year in high school, didn't really fall in love with it, mainly because I couldn't afford to play it the way I wanted to play it monetarily. But it still interests me watching people play it and following the game, essentially, even though I don't play it. I loved the Pro Tour documentary that came out on Netflix last month. That was a very, very interesting watch. If you guys haven't watched it already, I highly recommend it. I believe it's called Enter the Battlefield. So we don't see the Crown of Gold come out yet. A couple of dupes. There's, looks like the Tyene. Yeah? No? I'm going to have to start looking these cards up by the art. Yep, that is a Tyene. So he spent pretty much all of his dollars on a minimal investment that really is not going to make that big of an impact if you can't win a challenge with her. I think the Targ player is still firmly in control of this game. I have played against Tyene, and she is a gigantic pain. And I wanted to scream about how she was overpowered and annoying, but I realized that it is a risk to put her in your deck, because in certain matchups she's going to be phenomenal and win you the game, but in others she will be a 6-cost, essentially useless character. So I happened to be playing Greyjoy when I faced her, and obviously she's fantastic amongst Greyjoy, who has very few native intrigue icons. But a house like Targ, Lannister, in the mirror match, they're really not going to care all that much about Tyene.
I only play giant guys, so I'm like the typical like player in Magic. It's like, oh, that's a giant creature. I don't feel like.
It's always fun listening to the background chatter in these games. Occasionally you can pick out a familiar voice. I really like the way the Targ player's playing here. He's taking his time, doing his math, but not necessarily playing scared, which is sometimes hard to do in a regional. I should point out that even though this is the first game in this series that we have released here at AMC, this is actually round 3 of the tournament. Table 1, I believe. There was technical difficulties recording rounds 1 and 2. So if my information is correct, both of these players are undefeated at this time. So this is not a random Swiss, round 1 game where it could be a chump deck versus an all-star deck. So both of these guys clearly know what they're doing. And both decks are clearly good enough to go 2-0. So the Danny engine is doing good, filling his hand, claiming that renown. He has enough gold left, according to the dice, to use Illyrio. Fully in control still. So Martell's opting to military. I don't know how I really feel about this. The military challenge is always interesting to me when both players have massive boards like this, because let's say you attack and you win. What are you really gaining? So he's essentially kneeling Knight of Flowers to have him get rid of a dupe. Like, I don't know. Essentially, the reason I don't like it is because you can accomplish the exact same thing by throwing Wildfire next turn and not wasting one of your challenges this turn when he could have been used for a power challenge. So I think the Targ player again made a mistake here by getting rid of a dupe rather than the reducer chud. You should always save dupes where you can, for the most part. Obviously, there's circumstances otherwise, but I'd much rather have both of those chuds dead and Illyrio and the dragon still duped. It puts you in a much, much better position after the Wildfire. And once Valor hits the environment, you absolutely need to have your dupes alive and well for the plot phase, because you never know when you're going to need them. So I think that's a play mistake by the Targ player.
I did the math wrong on that. I was like figuring
Nothing too dramatic going on right now. Both players very soft-spoken, so it's difficult to follow the exact action with the background noise. But it looks like we have an intrigue, 2-claim intrigue challenge here coming through. All right, here we go. Now, I believe the Targ player is in striking distance of closing this turn. So I think if Martell has Wildfire, he's got to throw it. I'm not really sure why he hasn't been using Ariane as much. Maybe he just forgot. But he needs to even the board. He can't continue this pace.
The never expect is like, now you return one of your guys, return one of their guys, pop one of the guys, and kill one. And then there's one, I don't know why I've forgotten about putting the cheeky thing was to be there, show maybe that I did it making the dragons in my hand.
Well, that's not usually. That means that, like, so I've got to keep stealing the one off of Tyene to keep her from doing the poison. So it zeroes out. So I don't gain it. So it's like she's just sitting there doing nothing. No, you get that.
I don't know. I'm just really frustrated with these plot choices right now. I just don't get it. I mean, I can see why Targaryen's not trying to reset the board, but unless Martell just doesn't have a reset, it's frustrating to see these mistakes go through. If you can't push challenges through, you have one option. Use the plot game to alter the board state to make sure you can push challenges through. And these plots really aren't doing that. I mean, you're getting 5 gold, but when you're that far behind, I just don't understand. I would have to see the rest of the plot deck, but I mean, I can see why Targaryen threw the summer plot for 5 gold, but not the Martell player. 5 gold is not going to get you out of this hole. It's just not. And to top it off, he saves 2. So we know he has a Tears in his hand. Maybe he's got some sort of plan, but what is he going to hit with Tears that really matters? I don't see anything. I'd like to see the Crown of Gold get used here, finally. I don't know what else he's saving it for at this point. Just remove a body. Maybe get Tyene out of here. Thank you. Smart. Now that's one less worry. Even though she wasn't all that impactful, it's one less thing he's got to worry about sniping off his Chud. He can still save $1 to bluff the Dracarys. We can't see if he has one in his hand or not, but I'm glad to see that play. And yet another dragon dupe. Okay, so now his decision to take that dupe last turn makes a little more sense, unless he just top-decked that. But maybe he pulled it with insight, so he knew he could afford to get rid of it. But still, actually, if I knew I had the 3rd dupe, I still would have killed the Chud, and then had a triple dupe dragon after the reset. Why not? It's going to give you more versatility and utility after the reset than a stupid Chud would. Still a ton of cards for Targ. I believe Martell has 3. Cards win games. And here comes, this should be all she wrote. If he doesn't close this turn, I believe he'll close next turn. Targaryen. He's got an army out there, especially with Martell going first. I think Targaryen, even if he does win initiative, he should make the Martell player go first and either pass challenges to play defense or stupidly attack and just leave himself open. Make your opponent make the bad mistakes. Put the decisions on him first, and then you can just mop up the difference. So far in 2nd edition, I really feel like the person who has to decide things first is at a tremendous disadvantage, especially when they're already behind. It's a very precarious position you're putting yourself in, and I think Martell's making a huge mistake right now, attacking away. He has 2 power on the Knight of Flowers, none on his house. Targaryen's at risk of closing, and he's kneeling 2 characters for an essentially meaningless challenge. I don't understand. I just don't get it. What could Targaryen possibly be worried about? Let's say he has a Tears. Let's say he has a Put. It's not really going to change the match all that much. You still have bodies, and that's all Crossing requires, unfortunately, is bodies. But in 2nd edition, my opinion so far, or my feeling so far, is that when you're behind, unfortunately, you sort of have to play defensively if you are a first player, because any little tiny mistake or any opening you give your opponent to capitalize on is only going to widen that gap and put you further behind. So you have to try to win initiative, make them go first, and then counterattack where you can to try to stem the bleeding. Otherwise, if you're first player and you kneel out all these bodies, you're just making it easier for them to finish you. So I really don't understand this. And we've yet to see what the Tyrell is adding to the Martell deck. I guess the suspicion of just Knight of Flowers. Maybe they threw in the Gift of Arbor Red, the Much and More type card. But I don't see much. And I really don't understand why Targ's defending here, to be honest. Sure, he can stand Danny with the dragon, but it's silly. Just silly. So you netted 2 power and you've knelt 3 bodies and left your board almost completely open. Congratulations. And to people who give me shit for being hard on people, excuse my language, that, in my opinion, is how people are going to learn. I can sugarcoat it and just say he made a mistake, but I think he made a dumb decision. That doesn't mean he's a bad player. That doesn't mean his deck sucks. I'm just trying to comment on the strategy he is employing at all. Just that. Not him as a person, not him as a player or a deck builder. I think the strategic decision that he made this round in kneeling out now 4 characters when his opponent is on the verge of closing is asinine. So now what are you going to do? You got almost nothing left standing. You're on your back. Your knees are behind your head. And now he's got to run you through, and there's nothing you can do about it. All you can do is defend and lose, essentially. He's adding the Renown. He's getting more cards. He's going to use her again. He's going to get a crossing power. He's going to win Dom. All preventable if you had just played a little bit more careful, a little bit more turtle, and then try to even the board state with your plots. That's what the plots are for. If you fall behind, you got to use your plots. And if you don't have plots, well, then maybe we can talk about your deck building, because you got to build plots to catch yourself back up. That's the whole point. I know people will disagree, but I think you have 7 slots in a plot deck. That's a good pull. He got rid of his tiers. That's one less thing he's got to worry about. But you got 7 slots in a plot deck. I think you use 3 of them for high gold economy, 5 gold plus. You're going to use 1 of them for a reset, some sort of First Snow, Wildfire, or Valor when it comes out. And the other 3 are utility or toolbox plots that you're going to use for specific situations, whether that's a confiscation to get rid of an attachment, whether that's something like Filthy Accusations to kneel a key character, or there's so many toolboxy things you can use. A Fortified Position even would have helped him here to stop Danny from getting all that extra power in the cards and standing. Well, now he's pulling a summons. Targ's going to extend his lead with more gold. I don't know what card he's going to try to look for here. Maybe a Nymeria, but what could possibly help him out of this hole? I don't know. I think this game's over. Targ's going to close this turn, because the answer is really there is no character that is going to help Martell right now. Unless he gets Varus, and Varus can survive, but I don't think the game is going to last to the next domination phase to matter. Looks like a Courtesan of the Rose. Wow. I'm just, unless the resolution is such that I'm seeing that wrong. I mean, maybe that was his only option. Maybe he whiffed. But I think we can all see the writing on the wall at this point. I mean, and realistically, let's say, with the start that the Targ player had, I don't know what hope Martell had anyways, to be honest with you. You get 2 dragons, Danny and Illyrio out on the first turn. I mean, my God, what more can you want? Okay, it looks like I do see maybe a aGoT Gray for Martell. That might help if he can get the power off of Danny. But unfortunately for him, the Targ player can just play around that by not attacking with Danny, and so he knows he's not going to lose her power. He may not be able to close this turn, so aGoT, if he can play it, may put things forward for another round and delay it another round, but I don't think it's going to win him the game or help him to turn the corner and take the lead. I actually can't think of any cards that Martell could draw right now that would turn this around. Well, let's see what kind of board he can muster here. I think he has to play the aGoT, if only to extend the game or make tough decisions. And he does. Glare really bad in the middle of the table there, folks. We apologize for that. No matter how many games we record, every shop is a little different, so we do our best to reduce the glare where possible, but sometimes it's just inevitable. These gaming shops like the fluorescent lights, and you need a well-lit environment to play, and unfortunately it's just not conducive for good filming sometimes. But we will continue to try to improve on that for you guys. So he only plays the aGoT and saves 4 gold. I have to imagine that he's got at least another Vengeance for Elia in his hand. Some kind of something to help him extend this game. Otherwise, there's no reason to not play bodies. You gotta put bodies on the board. He didn't even play the character that he drew, so we know he has a character that he opted not to play. But unfortunately, so does his opponent. So his opponent can now play around this as well. I'm surprised not to see more hands judgments in the meta these days. There are so many powerful events, but I also know that it's very difficult actually to find slots to put the hands judgment because you want to play your good events. And if you're playing your good events, where do you find room for the hands judgments? You know, what are you cutting out to include the hands judgments to keep your deck at a reasonable number of cards? You know, 60, 61, maybe 62. It's hard. And that is why I have nothing but the utmost respect for the best deck builders in this game. Because I can't do it. I may be able to play a little bit, but I've never been a good deck builder. And finding and perfecting that balance is absolutely a skill. Way more so than playing. You need way more talent to be a good deck builder than you do a good player. Anybody can be a good player. Anybody. If you have a friend that plays any sort of trading card game or collectible card game, you can teach him to be an excellent player in a matter of weeks, I would say. Alright, Knight of Flowers just got put to the sword, so this game's over. They're just going to go through the motions. But to continue my thought, if you have anybody with any sort of brain in their head for strategy or analysis that has a history of card games in their past, you can teach them to play Game of Thrones at a very high level very quickly. And by very quickly, I mean a couple of weeks, a month. You know, take him to a couple of random tournaments, him or her, and they will get good very quickly. Perfect example of this is Mark Berenbach from Boston, who just closed the New Hampshire regional last week. Or I guess yesterday, depending on when you're listening to this. It was Saturday the 11th, I believe, of June. He came in second at the Connecticut regional. Relatively brand new player, but a long history of Magic play, I believe, on the Pro Tour, or close to it. I picked up the game super fast, and now he's probably one of the best players in Boston. But deck building, that's a whole nother animal. Maybe the skills translate for Magic, but I'm not entirely sure that they do. And the best deck builders in this game, I mean, I'm not going to name any by names. I think we all know who they are at this point. It's a talent that I am extremely envious of. I wish I had it, but I don't. But I still enjoy playing, and that's all that matters to me. So I'm just sort of vamping here because I think this game's over and both players know it. They're about to shake hands and call it a day. But if you want to excel at deck building, I don't know that there's any way to naturally improve other than to seek out the best deck builders and ask them for advice. So that's all for today's episode, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on AMC.